Cause you're listening to Jams and Tea, you won't see the show on your TV, so we talk about things musically. Cause you're listening to Jams and Tea, listening to Jams and Tea.
Welcome everybody to the Jams and Tea podcast, where we spin the jams and spill the tea. And we're coming at you with a new Record Club episode this week with Tyler's recommended album, and that is The Mollusk by Ween.
Yeah. So
Tyler, who are Ween?
So
Ween thins.
So yes, today it's a very special episode today. We finally answer the age-old question: who lives in a pineapple under the sea?
Bob SquarePants.
The answer is on this album. So Ween, I don't know where I was going with that. Ween are an alternative rock / weird psychedelic band that came up in the 90s, made a bunch of really lo-fi, absurd records, and then suddenly got big. And so they were given access to the studio, and so they made a string of studio records that frankly blow my tits off every time I play them. They're this eclectic and strange band that embrace the weirdness, and often towards the back half of their career, once they were working in the studio with a higher budget and with a bigger band, they would execute these interesting and funny concepts behind their records. The Mollusk is probably the most well-known Ween record. It's one of the most singular and conceptually unified and tight structurally. And yeah, essentially, it's not like a concept record in the sense that it tells a continuous story, although I've found some curious message boards on the internet which have attempted to string the songs together into a single narrative. But it's more a sense of songs that revolve around a nautical or an aquatic theme, the notion of like life at sea, both like literally what it might be like to live at sea or in the sea, and emotionally like living in a state of being at sea, being kind of untethered from
half SpongeBob, half the lighthouse.
Yeah, like being out of touch with civilization, basically. And yeah, it's a very, very interesting record. And yeah, so something that I want to sort of dispel about Ween from the outset. Ween, in case there was any uncertainty, Ween are not a satire band. These guys don't write parody songs, or they don't often write them anyway, and certainly not at this point in their career either. By the time they made this record, and even more so on 2003's Quebec, which I know multiple members of this podcast have listened to, and I've made no bones about being my personal favorite record of theirs, although this is very close behind. But anyway, by this point in the career that they were making records like this one in Quebec, they were much more engaged in sort of, I don't want to say serious songwriting because that's not right either, but just a more focused attempt at making at contributing to the oeuvre of rock music, but also kind of like making sure they leave their own very idiosyncratic imprint on it. So you could never mistake any of their stuff for another band, even though they're always like changing their style up. Quite frequently in this record, to be honest. The music of Ween is undeniably tongue-in-cheek, it's frequently ridiculous, but it's also entirely emotionally honest and fun. These are two guys having such a great time playing music, with an interest in capturing such a broad range of genres, but only in as much as they're able to do them justice. The Gene and Dean Ween never bite off more than they can chew. These are not two guys seeking to deconstruct rock music, nor are they solely out there to make gag songs and talk about their dicks. They imbue their frequently ridiculous sense of humor in their music, but they also work the balance between that silliness and what you might call quote unquote serious songwriting. They don't try to be Dylan or the Beatles, though they are doubtlessly influenced by both. They just make songs that they feel like making, and it rules. Ween have been one of my greatest discoveries of this year musically, in the sense that I was not expecting to enjoy them as much as I do. Certainly was not expecting to come away thinking they're one of the greatest rock bands of the 90s. But yet here we are with that as well. And yeah, I guess, does anyone mind if I do my review?
Go ahead.
By all means.
Okay, cool. I know I've gone first a few times today, but I just feel like I have a lot to say. Well, that's not unusual, Tyler. Okay.
What the fuck was that?
that was me having a Norman Bates moment.
Yeah.
He wouldn't
Really,
reveal
it's a little
it.
scary.
No, we hate sick precious.
That's it. That's what it was.
have it as friends.
It was a Smeagol moment. It was a Smeagol moment. I'm sorry.
We love these hobbitses. No, we hate them precious.
You sound
Carry
exactly like Gene on one of the songs on this record. Anyway,
What he sounds like is the fucking vocal mixing on the second half of I'm Dancing at the Show Tonight.
Is he? But is his name literally Gene Ween?
no,
No.
that's that Gene and Dean Ween are their stage names.
Okay,
Yeah,
I thought
it's
their
like
names
the
were actually
Ramones.
Ween. Oh my
Gene
god.
and Dean Ween, if that is his real name.
I think
I'll
of them
just-
like it's kind of a Ramones thing where they just call themselves that because
The
it's
artist formerly known as Ween.
Yeah. So
Miss
the
Gene.
mollusk. Mollusk is
Gene Wiener lives on his back.
I apologize.
the mollusk is the reason I picked the mollusk. It's really like the perfect. It's really like the perfect Ween album in a sense. Like it is just quintessentially the Ween record in every sense of the word. It is both their tightest record, their most consistent record, and their most fun experience from front to back. And Dancing in the Show Tonight is a delightfully absurd intro, but it also has a sense of filled out detail and grandeur to it. Gene and Dean are great at imbuing music that might seem initially fluffy or just bizarre for its own sake with a sense of hugeness, of richness, of like more detail than you might expect, especially once they had a full band as they did here. The Mollusk's title track, I'm just in love with this song. It is equally simple and perfect. It's a looping acoustic guitar passage with these frilling synth lines. There's a delightful horn intrusion in the bridge. It's just so charming, so delightful, so impeccably detailed, but never overstuffed. Each time I come back to it, I'm in awe of how perfectly varied the textures are on this track, but also how effectively they're deployed. And what is also particularly pleasing about the Mollusk is that to a certain extent is toned back on the more somber Quebec, is a true sense of unblinking absurdity. You get these swinging grooves like on Polka Dot Tail, which are embellished by the most fulsome and unexpected textural layering, like the guitar solo that just bursts through and rings out at the song's core. You also get moments of harsher, buzzing, punk-influenced scrawl like I'll Be Your Johnny on the Spot. These tracks affect disparate styles, but they never feel disconnected because of the record's sheer unrelenting pace. And these tracks are not slight either, like they often were on Ween's earlier stuff. This is an album that manages to have such a fast-paced movement without ever feeling like it is rushing through any of its ideas. Once you get to Mutilated Lips, I think a particularly impressive run of successive tracks begins. Lips itself is this deliciously surreal and vaguely psychedelic piece that alternates between chorus vocals that swirl across the mix like they were recorded in the Twin Peaks Red Room, and more fast-paced delivery that is pitch shifted to accentuate the track's off-kilter aquatic vibe. There's a delightful passage of vaguely Latin guitar towards the end. That's another brilliant example of how these tracks are just loaded with unexpected but perfect instrumental additions that ensure they never waste a second. This seriously might be the most economical rock album of the whole 90s. Gene and Dean's vocal versatility across their career is another string in their bow, and here it's deftly deployed. almost flexed in the sheer range of different characters that they fully embody purely through modulating their voices. I should point out there are no guest vocalists on this record. Most of the vocals are handled just by Gene, I think, although Dean helps out as well. But all the different voices you hear are all this band. Perhaps the most overt and memorable example is the addictive sea shanty that is the Blarney Stone, complete with its rousing accordion solo, multi-tracked surly choral vocals, and hilariously explicit and vividly depicted details of debauchery and drunken exploits at sea. I'm basically 99.9% certain that based on what Steven Hillenburg has said, that the vocal delivery on this song was a direct inspiration for the character of Mr. Krabs in SpongeBob. The duo don't forget moments of more earnest emotional songwriting either. That stuff is all over Quebec, but it's more selectively employed here. And it gives tracks like It's Gonna Be All Right a particular strength. This is not like a huge song, but to me it feels timeless and classic. The vocal melody over the chorus lifts and drops in a particularly satisfying and hooky way that also feels wistful and deeply sad. The Golden Eel is iconic, classic Ween, one of the purest examples of their early classic sound updated with the production value, tightness, and focus of their studio recording. Where in the past, a track like this would writhe in a muddy and brown mix. Here, the song absolutely explodes in its chorus, a thrilling piece of cascading rock music, tightened to burst. That's all the more impactful for how perfectly it is mixed and how Gene and Dean use classic sounding vocal melodies and chord progressions to give the track the feel of a work song or a hymnal or a chant that you might hear in a fantasy movie. Except this one gets a blitzing guitar solo as the bow on top, courtesy of Dean. Much like the extended diversion into revenge storytelling on the Latin-influenced song Buenos Amigos Tardes on Chocolate and Cheese, the song Cold Blows the Wind is one of the most potent and captivating examples of the duo's ability to tell a moving and timeless story imbued deeply with their very idiosyncratic character, with warbling synth bass and a great string progression over the top, filling it out. Waving My Dick in the Wind is a fast-paced slice of driving ska-influenced rock in the vein of the earlier track Johnny, but even better here, I think. You get some Beach Boys harmonies in the back of the mix, adding depth, call and response vocals, staccato guitar stabs, and rattling percussion. The whole thing just feels warm, jaunty, and again, so much fucking fun. Buckingham Green follows, and it's just one of the best fucking songs of the 90s. Basically, every Ween record has at least one classic song on it, sometimes multiple. On Quebec, that's Transdermal Celebration. On White Pepper, it's Flutes of Chi. And on Chocolates and Cheese, it's Roses Are Free. And on The Pod, it's Captain Fantasy. And here, on the Mollusk, it is assuredly Buckingham Green. A vaguely doom-laden song, heavily influenced by British prog in the 70s. It manages to condense what early 70s Genesis would take 10 minutes to do into 3 minutes and change. And as a result, it's better than it has any right to be. Maybe better than anything that Genesis ever did, which I can't believe I'm saying. I literally love this song to death. And then it's like, you're bowled over by this, and then you get fucking Ocean Man just coming right in after it. For all its memed popularity, I think that Ocean Man has a genuine case for maybe being the catchiest song ever written by anyone.
Yeah.
And although its meme status inarguably dominates basically every conversation about it, let's not forget why it was a meme. It was memorably featured in the end credits of the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. And something I need to make clear is that the SpongeBob SquarePants show as a television program was inspired by this album. Steven Hillenburg heard that album and said, I want to make a cartoon that evokes this feeling, except I want to make it for kids. And so that its source of inspiration came full circle on the SpongeBob film. He put that song, Ocean Man, the arguable highlight of this record, at the end of that movie to pay tribute to the band and the album that directly inspired his whole show. A show that Ween actually featured on in one of the first few seasons, performing a song where they teach SpongeBob how to tie his shoelaces. Having the knowledge that Ocean Man derived so much of its popularity from an inclusion in a movie as a tribute to the band who wrote it, I think gives the track a surprising level of poignancy to me. And I think it's even more so in light of Steven Hillenburg's recent death from ALS. It's just a track that is so much fun, so jaunty, but now I listen to it and it's also kind of like bittersweet in a way, that I don't think that Gene and Dean could ever have foreseen it being, but yet the quality of the songwriting makes it feel like you could believe that was the intention all along as well. It's just remarkable how iconic and perfect this song manages to be in just 2 minutes. I can't wait to hear what you all have to say about it. Closer, She Wanted to Leave, is cinematic in its own way. It's this widescreen sized track influenced by British folk bands like the Waterboys, who took that core sound and turned it anthemic, huge, and filtered through 80s pop aesthetics. It's a suitable end to the record, and it's also capped off by a distorted and dirgy reprise of the opening track that has, to me, it sounds like it's been transmitted from the depths of the sea. The album itself coming full circle as this strange and submerged gift from the waterlogged ocean floor. It's really remarkable how consistent and engaging I find this album to be. I basically think it's a perfect record, and I don't mind if there are people here who don't share that view. But like listening to it last night, I was just struck by the thought that this thing just gets it. Like it just gets it from start to finish, and it never loses me. And I feel like a fool for not listening to it sooner, because this is the kind of thing that I would have loved as a teenager, and I love even more now. It feels like such a condensed but also exploratory and invigorating creatively exercise in the possibilities of like alternative rock music and psychedelic rock and that kind of era of sound. It's so fully formed and so much fun that putting it as a record club choice for this week was as much about getting to hear you all speak your thoughts on it as it was about giving us an excuse in this segment to just have fun with an album. And I hope it's fun for you guys, because it's fun for me. I love it. Good stuff.
What a good review. I just want to say, I've had the pleasure of seeing the Waterboys live, because I lived for 2 years with the Scotsman, for whom they're his favourite band. Yeah. And he dragged me along to see them, and it converted me. Yes. And your comparison point to Closer to them is so on the money. I feel pained that I didn't make that call.
That's okay. I'm glad. I feel validated. Saoirse, I know how much this album means to you. I'm going to suggest we do what I want to see
other people go first, because with the exactly. I completely agree. I just wanted to say that there.
Yes. Okay.
Also, just want to say real quick, the Waterboys, Fisherman's Blues, just one of the best songs ever written.
Well, it's a great album too. The album of the same name is just as good. But yeah, I'm glad we randomly ended up shouting the Waterboys out. What a great band.
My parents used to play that in the car all the time. So like it's been with me since as long as I can remember.
Well, on the note of water, boys, and fishermen, Morgan, I would like to hear from you next on this album.
I'm none of the things that you just said.
But Morgan, notable fish boy.
Yeah. Yeah, I said in the previous episode, I enjoyed Quebec a fair bit. Oh, excuse me. So many burps. And so sort of perhaps unfairly, I was comparing this to that in my mind the entire time. And I have to say, I do ultimately prefer Quebec. I think this is a good record. I cannot say it worked for me 100% of the time. I have to admit, sometimes I felt like some of these songs were just bits that went on a bit too long. I think it's fun. It's nice and breezy. The pacing is really sort of propulsive. Very very lean feeling record. Lean Ween. Thank you.
Like the band.
Yeah. But I definitely find myself preferring the side of Ween that's a bit more sort of emotionally forward, I guess I'd say. Like for instance, even on this album, I prefer stuff like It's Gonna Be All Right and like even Ocean Man to something like Waving My Dick in the Wind or I'll Be Your Johnny on the Spot. It's just like sometimes I'm like I don't know why I'm listening to this. I don't I don't get it. I don't get the bit. Um, but it's a fun time, and there are definitely spots I enjoy on it. I think the title track is pretty great. The Blarney Stone is just yes, all of the above. Yeah,
Yes.
Pink Eye on My Leg. That's a song that I listen to.
It certainly is.
That's definitely the fucked jam of this album.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
I said the same thing in what I wrote.
Buckingham Green. The only thing I remember about that song is that I keep wanting to call it Buckingham Nicks because I'm confusing Fleetwood Mac members. Buckingham Nicks, Lindsey Buckingham, Stevie Nicks, Buckingham Green, Lindsey Buckingham, and Peter Green. I'm
Tyler's
sorry.
having an existential folly.
Yeah, no, that was just
Disappointing.
gorgeous.
That's disappointing.
Yeah, it is. This was pretty much exactly the album I feared would be when I put on like Quebec for the first time. It's just like, okay, rock on, dudes. Keep it away from me.
True dudes rock
each other.
music.
Yeah.
This is just a really long way of saying I enjoyed it, but it left little to no impact on me.
Okay. Well, in that case, I would like to turn to August next and hear what August has to say. I feel like August will be hopefully a bit of a counterpoint to Morgan.
Well,
fuck you too.
No, but I did enjoy this album a fair bit. So the way I'm gonna first go into this is what I think kind of the underlying theme is here. Something that I feel that a theme to this album that I think has gotten stronger with time, especially because of Ocean Man. And that is this idea of warped nostalgia, as I'll call it. Kind of taking something very childish and nostalgic and then distorting that and twisting that into something much more horrific and strange. And this is a bit of a personal journey for myself, because I fondly remember when I was kind of getting into music and listening to the song Ocean Man a bunch. In fact, I enjoyed that song so much, a lot of that in part because of my exposure to it in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, that I ended up writing and scripting out a whole comic book in regards to that song, and basically running with my own interpretation of it. And I'm not going to get into that here, but I may some other time. I can leave that in the comments.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it sometime at least.
No, yeah, I won't get into it here because it would take
In this
8
essay,
hours.
I will.
Yeah, no, but warped nostalgia. A lot of this comes in the realization, first for me, what album Ocean Man the song belonged to, because it's such a fun, easy to get behind tune, I think, for pretty much for a lot of people. I think even if you're quite young, you can get behind this song. There's not a lot of like really explicit language in it. There's a great sense of adventure to how the song is told. But then you listen to the Mollusk, and it is a strange, kind of tongue-in-cheek, very adult, at least in terms of these kind of more adult style of humor, I guess, especially with tracks like Waving My Dick in the Wind. A lot of these song structures are very reminiscent of a lot of kind of older kind of songs you would hear, at least songs I remember hearing a lot, like when you're very young, like she'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. There's a lot of that in the kind of structure and writing of these songs, particularly, as I think Tyler made a good point of mentioning, I'll Be Your Johnny on the Spot, and of course the aforementioned Waving My Dick in the Wind. Those have that very kind of very, it's hard for me to describe, but almost like childish structure to how the lyrics are written, but it subverts that in the way of I'll Be Your Johnny on the Spot, of course, has this like pounding, frenetic, almost like metal adjacent instrumental. And of course, Waving My Dick in the Wind is a song about what it's about. So I find that as kind of some kind of warping of this very nostalgic feeling. Even a Polka Dot Tale being a song that accomplishes a very similar effect, with just the very schmaltzy kind of sound of that song being very evocative of a lot of like early Disney tunes, I think. But yet in that song you have the kind of Billy and Help Me, which almost sound like someone awakening from like a drunken stupor or something. It's
Help me.
Precisely.
The way he
It's now an
sees it.
ASMR
The
podcast.
very specific way he sees it.
So yes, continuing with the album. No, I'm gonna stop.
I can see Morgan just be like, I want to kill myself.
I mean, I could feel his spittle in my ear.
No, continuing with this album though, that's kind of what also, I'm dancing in the show tonight, serving as another kind of example of this. This literally being a reworking of a 1953 Christmas song called All My Ears Are Straight, which was originally sung by a 10-year-old child, as it so happens. So I guess that's essentially my kind of thesis as to just the general theme of a lot of what's going on here. It's and also in that another thing going into that is this kind of Storm Thorgerson's cover for this album being
yes.
this.
Yeah, I forgot to
this
mention
kind
the,
of
I forgot to mention the art designed by Storm.
yeah,
Torgerson
being
or
this
whatever.
kind of weird mishmash of a lot of familiar looking shapes and forms, but ultimately it's something so unrecognizable and strange. But on to my thoughts on the album itself here. I think the first kind of 4 songs are very good, a very fast-paced, consistent run. Mutilated Lips, I think is...
I love that song so much.
Oh, it's so fun. It's this really... to no one's surprise, it was written under the influence of heavy psychedelics, as were a few of
What?
the...
What on
Yeah,
earth do you
right?
mean?
But as were multiple of the songs on here, of course, I think that this track for me succeeds quite a bit well in its very manipulated vocals. A lot of the ways Gene, I think it's Gene who sings, or did they both sing?
I think
don't
Gene
know.
is the main singer.
Okay.
Like to speak to Mr. Ween.
But a lot of the way his vocals are manipulated across the album, I think, are very interesting to the ears. They tend to throw you off. A lot of the songs end up kind of delightfully short with very poppy structures. I feel the songs that work for me the least are when for me they just stretch their lyrical content a bit too thin. I think, as Morgan put it quite well, just feeling like extended bits that don't ultimately amount to a whole lot. Particularly, I find this stretch of Golden Eel, Cold Wind
Not
Blows.
Golden Eel slander in the fucking chat. How dare you? That song fucking rules.
It's not a chat; it's a video.
Tyler,
call.
I need to tell you that you should have been more prepared to hear some dissent on the album with Sea Shanties and Ocean Man.
True.
And also Pink Eye, I find a bit lacking, and these tracks did all feel pretty bloated, slowed down the pacing a fair bit for me. But on the other hand, I do find that songs like It's Gonna Be All Right managed to be like successfully good juxtapositions of various different kind of tones and sounds on this album. I loved that they could pull that off successfully. This very like dramatic shifting in lyrical tones that and yet they can always pull off something quite well with no matter what emotional state they're trying to go for. Waving My Dick in the Wind stands as a kind of just really fun, quick song, and and I just think it's funny as hell. It makes me smile every time it's on. Of course, there's Ocean Man with that plucky, kind of very signaturely plucky guitar, the really abstract lyrics, saying, and yet the sense of narrative flow. It's just really a genius song when it comes to brass tacks. And the closer, She Wanted to Leave, of course, jokingly with the parentheses reprise, being a reprise of no other track on the album, kind of closes with yet this other kind of distinctly mournful, gut-wrenching tune. I think it's a great closer. As a whole, though, I don't love every song on here equally. I don't think they're all equally engaging, but as a whole, I think the pacing is still brisk. It's still a fun album. And I think it still works well as a really interesting, unique album that you won't really get from any other band.
Well said.
Very well said.
Jake.
You're the one left.
God, it's like the way Tyler said Jake just kind of like gave that little look of just like, it's all
Go
on.
on.
Motherfucker.
Come on, Ocean Man,
And-
take me by the hand and show me to the land that you understand.
Okay, well, I'll show you to the land. So I wanted to at least I didn't want this to be the Ween album that popped my particular just dropped that particular cherry because I was just kind of like this band just from the way they have been described to me, they just sound like they're not my thing. It sounds like distinctly something that is just. So then, cut to me listening to Quebec and fucking loving it, and just, not everything on it works for me. It's just that the album is so overall encompassingly so fun and so musically inventive, and like Tyler said, they're not a parody band. There's a lot of emotional honesty in that music, and I appreciate that emotional honesty. So I was like, okay, I've got this. So now I can go into the Mollusk with some context. So that way I'm not if it's an album that has some of the more weirder Ween-isms, I'm not exactly in uncharted territory. So I wrote down my thoughts because I didn't want to come off like a dumbass. So I think the reason I feel like I find so much enjoyment in Quebec is because Ween's weirdness and personality very much feel like a feature and not a bug. When a song like Tried and True has a lyric like, "Can I smell your whole dot 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 life?" I find it charming because the music around it is compelling and it doesn't really distract from it and achieves all of its goals and is not thematically not in keeping with the song. I find it compelling, and the music itself around it is really lush and inventive. Uh, with the Mollusk, I feel like despite it not being a bad album, and despite me definitely not enjoying it, it feels like the reverse. I hate to say I don't find the music on it compelling because a lot of it has aged really well. The synths and electronic elements still sound great, which I cannot say for every 20-plus-year-old album. A lot of the drumming is genuinely outstanding, and some of the heavier psych passages are genuinely effective. However, I find a lot of the guitars on here to be scratchy and discordant, which could be the intention, but there is so much of it, and it feels really monotonous. This, for me, holds a lot of it back significantly, because what I loved about Quebec was how well Ween could bounce back, and for the back and forth in between genres and styles without spreading themselves too thin. I'm not trying to admonish this album for not being another album. It's just the immediate one I have comparison and context for. A lot of the songs just don't ring as these fully formed ideas. As Morgan said, and as August echoed, some of them do really just feel like bits that go on for too long, and as a result, stretch themselves out for too long on far too little. They are occasionally in instances like The Blarney Stone, where variety and personality is beautifully combined to make a Ween song that is joyous and irreverent in exactly the right ways. But there are also points like Pink Eye, in parentheses on my leg, where the songs seem to aimlessly meander and build off of nothing, and don't skate by on their humor and just dip into being kind of annoying. There are more conventions or more conventional songs here, like I'll Be Your Johnny on the Spot and Waving My Dick in the Wind, that are fun and addictive and exactly what I want when I would go to Ween. But then, for every one of those, there's a song like the ill-conceived intro of I'm Dancing in the Show Tonight, which, for me, long outstays its welcome, considering it seems to think it's good enough as to be this cartoonish little thing and not more than that. And songs like Polka Dot Tail, where despite the variety and how well some of the instrumentation is aged, never do more as ring as kind of gimmicky and hollow to me. I want to have fun along with this band, but I feel like I'm at a party and I'm far too busy being frequently accosted by an annoying drunken patron that I'm constantly avoiding and trying to have a good time by paying attention to the music. I'll say that the album's final 3-song run of Buckingham Green, Ocean Man, and the closer slash hidden track are the most consistently I enjoyed the record. I just wish the experience overall maintained that level of consistency. It is far too much of a mixed bag with tendencies of Ween's I find far less interesting when they aren't putting their gimmick before their music. I enjoyed myself with this. I should probably emphasize that because I am putting a lot of emphasis on the negative parts, but it was a struggle, as this felt like a bit of a one-trick pony at times, and I was banging my head into a wall thinking, you fucking idiot, why can't you have fun? Have more fun, you boring asshole! And ultimately I came to the unfortunate realization that I can have fun, and I do, on Quebec. The difference, plainly, that the album is much better.
Well, I won't say that Quebec isn't a better album than the Mollusk, because it is. But
I think they're as good as each other.
Well, you're wrong and stupid.
But if I wasn't to say, like, Quebec is like, spoilers, Quebec is like a 9.5, 10 for me. And the Mollusk is like an 8, 9 area record for me.
See, and so I'd be lying if I said I don't feel like Morgan during the liturgy segment when I'm just like, I love Quebec and I just do not see how the Mollusk is comparable, honestly. World of difference for me.
Look, Quebec is like this fondue, this eaten mess of different...
Oh god, I fucking destroyed Tyler. Jesus.
I wish I hadn't even recommended that fucking album. Quebec, I mean. I wish we'd all like, because now this whole episode is just comparing it to Quebec constantly.
Ah, god
Hey.
Well, you know what, Tyler? I'll tell you this. If I hadn't listened to Quebec first, I never would have listened to it if I heard this first.
It's fine. It's all good.
I just want to make a distinction real quick, which is that I hate to compare them, but Quebec is like this sort of fantasia, very, very disparate ideas. And this is like, there is a theme, or rather a motif, and within that, it just has as much fun as is humanly possible. And those are two very different things to do, although they are vaguely comparable. And although I prefer one record, I don't want to say that one record, the other should live in its shadow, you know?
No, I wanted to say, like, in my write-up, you know, I'm not trying to admonish it for not being another album, but it's just the approach instrumentally, I find, is just, like, so much more compelling. I just, like, the songs here just feel so much more insubstantial than those.
That's fair. And I like it's certainly, I want to clarify, it's certainly valid to compare your experience between two very different records from an artist. I wasn't admonishing that at all. I just feel like it's a shame that this comparison has come up so often, but it is inevitable that it would. It's just a shame that it had to.
And we're also mostly doing it to point out how wildly different the two experiences are.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
it's really just not because of a quality thing. It's really more of an approach thing.
I mean, I wouldn't phrase it, because I don't want to say you're wrong. I wouldn't phrase it like these instrumentals are more insubstantial. I would phrase it like these instrumentals are more frivolous. And I consider that a positive.
I don't even really think that, though. I think these instrumentals are about as frivolous as the majority of the instrumentals on Quebec. It's just that
I would agree with that, actually.
It's just that the songwriting on Quebec is, and it's not at this, whatever, I'm going full in now. Quebec is a divorce record. It's a record about breakups. It's a record about depression. It's a record about self-loathing. This is a record about being a pirate.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's sort of what I mean. You know.
But like at the same time, like there's a dynamic focus and a dynamic diversity to all orchestration here that I wouldn't call it like necessarily one note or frivolous or comparatively less detailed or comparatively less satisfying. I mean, obviously satisfying is a subjective word, wrong one to use, but like, I don't know, to me, I think think of these two records as quite instrumentally similar, except just with different emotional centers.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that every time anyone has mentioned the name of a record, of a song, that song has then played in my head to the point where everyone says Ocean Man, I've had to physically restrain myself from going Ocean Man. Because as much as that song is a meme, Lord, is it full of hooks that just work.
No, it's great. Ocean Man rocks.
And I think I would agree with whoever said, I think it might have been Tyler, that it is a contender for one of the most catchy songs ever written by anyone.
Actually, I've been thinking, and I have a point to briefly inject, but then I'll let you go ahead. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but it only hit me just now that I realize my experience with this going into this album. I realized the key difference of I had also listened to a Ween album before this, that being their oh boy, the pod I had listened to, and I think that's key to understanding, I think, my difference in perspective between myself and Morgan and Jake, because the pod is a record that is like 75 minutes long, and it is one where, you would not enjoy it, I don't suspect.
It's even one of my least favorite Ween records.
Yeah, no, but I went into this album with that album on, like, in the back of my head, because it is significantly longer and it is also significantly less consistent. So to hear that boiled down into such a tighter package, I felt was a much more rewarding experience for me.
It also feels like the Mollusk is a more successful execution of some of what they were going for with the pod as well, because to me that's like a very waterlogged and kind of album that kind of has the same sort of feel as this one, except it's just less, it's not, doesn't have any studio work, so it's like recorded on a tape recorder basically.
No, I agree entirely there.
So like if you were to compare those two records, then the Mollusk looks like fucking Revolver.
I'm sure, but the fact is,
sorry to interrupt again.
No, it's a worthy contribution. Like the fact is that even though there are songs I like less than others, I am constantly engaged by this record, beginning to end. Like it opens with something like I'm dancing the show tonight. That it feels like the intent is to open it like this variety performance that I would see if like I was watching like Mike Leigh's Topsy Turvy, or just one of those old Victorian lower class stage shows where you'd have like the beginnings of what would later become drag culture. And everyone would just get in for this like variety show of we have this one bar that's in the middle of Camden where you can get a drink for £1.50 in today's money, and it's just going to be a lot of people who just spent a long day at work going in to see a man in lots of makeup and a dress throw his legs way up high. And the opening song gives you this introductory mood with these also incredibly strangely pitch shifted vocals that just increase the silliness and the sense of what you're about to see is not to be taken seriously, or that is to be taken seriously, but it is not to be taken as self-serious, I suppose, because I agree there's not a spoof band, it's not a parody band, but this is a cheeky record. This is a record that is cheeky, with its tongue wedged firmly in its cheek, sticking its middle fingers firmly up at the critics of music like this. And nowhere is this better exemplified than the opening track. It just feels to me like I'm just being welcomed by friends into this strange festival of weirdness. I enjoy track 2. It is a fine song in its own right, but the silliness has continued in track 3 with Polka Dot Tail, with these increasingly strange phrases that seem to throw back to Simon and Garfunkel's I want to call it, I can't remember, El Paso, the song by them that goes, I'd rather be a hammer than a nail.
El Condor Pasa.
Thank you. Thank you, Morgan. This song seems to throw back to a lot like that, including the line that will live in my memory forever. Have you ever made a flan and squished it in your hands? And I love the moment where the song begins to fade out and then the vocal comes in and goes, help me. And then it comes back in, but noisier. And that actually brings me on to the fact that I love the work with guitar tones on this record, especially. Frequently, like the bass will start off normal and then he'll just press on a pedal and the buzz on the bass will come in and it'll just overtake the whole song, and it's just so satisfying. This happens specifically on the next song, I'll Be Your Johnny on the Spot, where the fuzzy bass gives it this rollicking, raucous feeling of propulsive energy, where you feel like you are again in London Victorian times, like a gay prostitute in the back alleys, trying to get your Johnny. And this is before the more sort of psychedelic acoustic stripped back mutilated lips, with lyrics like I'm fine, accepting only fresh brine. And it's just, this whole record like that is full of these amazing little couplets that just are so, that don't feel silly, but are evidently very tongue-in-cheek and provocative and strange, and it gives this tone I can never quite put my finger on, and I want more of it, because I just want to understand what's happening in my brain. And then track 6 is the sea shanty, the Blairy Stone. After all, fucker, she'll get up and sing.
I listened to that today during work, and I was there was a small child checking out in front of me.
Wouldn't be
that was the lyric that played, and I was like,
would not be out of place on Nick Cave's Murder Ballads.
Absolutely not.
But like, only a band like Ween could do a song this provocative and outrageous and silly and cheeky and active and evidently comedic in the same way like the WAP is comedic, and also take it 100% seriously and make you take it 100% seriously. Only they could walk, and only they could make those contradictions work.
Counterpoint, Nick Cave in the bad seats.
Counterpoint, Tom Waits.
Yeah, also that.
Oh yeah.
I will not disagree with either of those points. I think that the balance struck by the song was comparable to those acts is still unique to itself.
We're also just being pedantic.
I know.
So.
Look, Murder Ballads is like my second favorite Nick Cave. It's fine. It's gonna be all right, which is the next song on the record. And I love the melody. I love on this song. It feels like a throwback to when the 80s were throwing back to the 60s. It's just got this wonderful like ballad, psychedelic, romantic thing. I love the synths that come on the chorus. And it's just got this wonderful sweeping romanticism to it. Golden Eel, it's pretty good. It's not my favorite song on the record. It's pretty good. But I wanna highlight, I mean, obviously, like Cold Blows the Wind is great. It's beautiful, and I could imagine it on Picaresque by the Decemberists. You know, if it was.
Ooh, good call.
Thank you. But I want to highlight Way From My Dick in the Wind so much because I love it so much. It's so good.
It is a fun song.
But this exemplifies the appeal of this record for me, is that this is fundamentally a pretty sweet song about trying to make your way through addiction to maintain your relationships. It's also a raucous rock song, and it's also a song about pissing in the street and waving your dick in the wind.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Like it's easy to read a lot of this stuff on the surface, because we encourage you to, but like not all these songs are just like as purely silly as they might seem. Like there is a layer to them. Like waving your dick in the wind as an image is like obviously this what you just described, but it's also like it's also like this the sensation of being left out in the cold, like you're standing there with your dick in your hand, like someone has left you in a situation where you're kind of like, well, fuck, I'm
I
here
take it
now.
to be a song like fundamentally about being an addict, because it references being caught in booze and all that shit. Where it's like, and I feel weird analyzing waving my dick in the wind to this extent, but I'm here now and I'm committed. There's this refrain of like, if it all goes all right, I'll be home with you tonight, but I'm waving my dick in the wind. And it's like, it feels to me like the narrator of the song is aware that the alcohol he's consuming will destroy every relationship he has, but he is so caught up in the joy that comes with the high of a drug that you're addicted to, that he's just like, if I can just make it through this night, it'll all be fine. But if you take a step back as the narrator, you'll see that the story is really about how this is this hollow and destructive. But it's also about waving your dick in the wind. Therefore, it's a 10 out of 10 song. And yeah, Buckingham Green, you've already highlighted very well how great it is. But my God, is Ocean Man not just one of my favorite songs ever? And it's just like, there's a thing that the guy who wrote, I think it's called Greg Alexander, he wrote the song called You Get What You Give, which is an amazing pop song.
Yes, very good, very good comp. Not like the songs sound similar, but like they have the same kind of energy. And also like I'm always here for a shout out to that song, which is a lot better than anyone remembers it being.
Absolutely. But he said, the writer Greg Alexander said about that song is he wrote it as like he was always trying to top the last thing he did on that song. And this song, even though it's only 2 minutes long, to the second feels exactly like that. Where it's, and to the extent where it has an insanely groovy and well mixed guitar solo and an amazing bass sound, and just amazingly cryptic and interesting and enticing sort of psychedelic lyrics. And it's only 2 minutes long and it ends, and I feel like I want more, but at the same time it gets out while the going's good, and I can respect that so much. And it ends when she wanted to leave with the hidden track, which we've already talked about a lot, and I love it so much. And the hidden track rendition of the opener is so good, and it's such a beautiful way to cap off the album. And as I said about Tallahassee, these two bookends feel like the opening number where you're introducing the show and the bowing in front of the audience. And I love the fact that this just feels like I've had an amazing night out with drinks and friends and stage and just getting drunk in the streets. And this song just feels like you're out in London, in Camden, with your best friends, and you're pissed. And it's great.
Saoirse, I'm not going to lie. It took you longer to include the mountain goats in this than I thought it would. but we got there eventually.
We did.
That's, I mean, and the real mountain goats are the friends we made along the way.
Go fuck yourself.
Okay.
I would like to add one final thing to this. That being that there is because I mentioned this artist earlier and it made me think, like something clicked in my brain. There is an album that suits this exact same purpose for me. This sort of irreverent, funny, kind of bombastic, but also, like Saoirse said, it's like, you're getting drunk with your friends and have a night out on the town, and it's this weird thing, and then parts of it are, like, sincere, but parts of it are, like, weird. And it's Rain Dogs. What the Mollusk is to Saoirse, Rain Dogs by Tom Waits. is to
Oh,
me.
I can totally see that. And I can
They
see that
are
working
like, and
in that
even
way,
like
yeah.
aside from the fact that that's what it is to me, they're very comparable albums in a lot of ways. Psychedelic sound
With the cover of
notwithstanding.
Rain Dogs as well, you know.
That's a good shout. Really good shout.
I want
Yeah,
Ween
it's
to
good.
cover Tom Waits and Tom Waits to cover Ween.
Yeah.
I need that. I need that split LP.
Thermal celebration.
All right. So, Jake, what are your favorite tracks and rating?
My favorite tracks are. I definitely undersold how much I love I'll Be Your Johnny on the Spot. Fucking fun ass song. Just I'll be your Johnny on the spot. Fucking good shit. The Blarney Stone also fantastic. And while I do love I do like Waving My Dick in the Wind, and I do love Ocean Man, and I do like She Wanted to Leave, I will have to say Buckingham Green, definitely top 3 songs on the album. Least favorite, probably Polka Dot Tail, and I give it a 6 out of 10.
Okay.
All right. Well, I
Otis.
guess that's me. Yeah, I'd give my distinction of 3 favorite tracks to Ocean Man, Waving My Dick in the Wind, and the Blarney Stone, which I did not mention, but is, as everyone has made the point of, quite good. I would give this an 8 out of 10. I quite
Nice.
enjoyed it.
Morgan.
I lost my spinny top. Damn it. My 3 favorites are She Wanted to Leave, fucking Cold Blows the Wind, and It's Gonna Be All Right. My least favorite is probably I'll Be Your Johnny on the Spot. It's also a 6 out of 10.
That's me then, and I quite like Polka Dot Tail, to be honest. I'm also going to include Ocean Man and Wave from Dick in the Wind, because I'm a simple bitch with simple pleasures. Do I have a least favorite? Probably the Golden Eel, but it's still pretty good. Going to give this record an 8 out of 10.
My favorite tracks are The Golden Eel, Buckingham Green, and Mutilated Lips. But really, basically, fucking any track on this record. I guess Pink Eye is probably the least good track, but I still don't think it's a bad song. And I fucking think this album is a 10 out of 10.
Oh, fuck yes.
Whoa, shocking.
Whoa.
So there's that.
Not allowed.
Wow, this is 7.6, and for comparison, Violent Femmes, the subtitle, got 7.7.
Well,
Not
that's
bad.
just
You know?
delightful.
Mouth clap is very
Okay.
visible now.
Well, next week on Record Club, we're going to be reviewing
Looks like
Tom
a
Waits's.
bad
Is that
elephant.
right? Is it Tom Waits's Bone Machine?
Yeah.
It is.
Tom
It
Waits'
is.
Bone Machine.
There
Wow,
we go.
weird
My favorite
segue.
Tom Waits
Tom
record,
Waits
yeah.
coming through.
Yeah,
And-
right.
And yeah, so Rock Over London, Rock on Chicago, Wendy's. Where's the beef?